Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project CAMELOT. I decided I would take this opportunity to do some commentary on what's been happening with the Eddie Page story and draw your attention to an article I've written on the front page of Project CAMELOT. And so I'm also going to talk about various things that have been going on with my YouTube channel and so on. But right now, I'm just going to pull up that article. Hopefully, I can show you this article now. So stand by. Actually, don't know how to share my desktop with this program. I'm using like a different. Okay, forget that. Don't know how to do that here. It's weird. I don't know if they let you share your desktop here, so that's kind of useless. Anyway, it's on the front page of Project CAMELOT. It's called Eddie Page, and it's basically an Eddie Page front page article saying new info, Eddie Page, Anunnaki or Pleiadian and updated. So I want to draw your attention also to the fact that I just did a broadcast live with Simon Parkes. And that is a must-see. There is so much good intel about what's really going on right now. You know, we're talking about the solar observatories, of which there are, I think, at least seven that were shut down. So don't be going on this completely bogus story that they're putting out in the United States about the observatory in the United States and New Mexico, because it's a complete lie. And please do listen to my interview with Simon Parkes, and we discuss our intel that both of us got together, separately. We discuss it, bring it all together. So very crucial information about weather wars, about the fires in Northern California. He substantiates the information I got from Captain Mark Richards about the aliens, the battle with the aliens that happened causing and during the fire in Northern California. The fire was basically a cover for that. So this is the kind of thing that's really fascinating. And I highly recommend you listen to that interview that I did today. So I also want to say that what YouTube is now doing to my channel is I seem to be under heavy surveillance, and they are marking my videos just when I go live as they mark them as not eligible, for not suitable for advertising, which means that they're trying to stop me from making money. Then I appeal it right away, and then somehow they do get approved, luckily. But I can tell you that I've got a whole row of videos that they have decided to not allow, and I was really hoping to be able to show it on this. But I'm afraid this is a different program than I usually use, so I don't see any button where you can share your desktop. Anyway, you can actually go and I don't know if you can do a search on my videos for what's called videos that are not monetized. And the reason they're not monetized is because YouTube won't let me monetize them, because they have gone back in my history. And I've been doing this now for over 10 years on YouTube, but 12 and a half years, actually getting close to 13 at this moment, being in Project CAMELOT. We had our channel. We were on YouTube from the very beginning, but or close to the beginning, but YouTube deleted our channel after 1 year. So that's why we're a year behind on the number of hits we actually got on all our videos back in those days. But anyway, they've actually gone back in history and marked demonetized videos that have like 300,000 views, which is completely ludicrous to go back there. And God knows what, they even have one about aliens, fighting battles in Vietnam with aliens, and they've demonetized it. And yet, it's not like talking about aliens is verboten, and it's not like talking about battles is verboten, because this goes on in television. Advertisers are perfectly happy to, advertise on all kinds of violent programs, et cetera, as you well know. So this is actually, the way that they try to squash and basically make life difficult for broadcasters such as myself, you know, investigative journalists, documentary filmmakers who try to get the truth out. So they do these insidious things. And luckily they have now green lighted the Simon Parkes interview that I did today. But this is how I actually pay my rent nowadays. And that's the only way I would be surviving in order to do what I'm doing now, because otherwise it's simply hopeless. So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to say is, before I get started, is that I am going to see Mark Richards, and I am doing that in about a week, a little over a week, on the 27th. And I'm trying to also interview another witness. So I do need funds to make that trip possible. So if you can donate to Camelot, it would be very appreciated. You can go onto my website, projectcamelot.tv or projectcamelot.org or projectcamelotportal.com. It's all the same URL going to the same place. So, and click on donate, and all the ways you can donate to Camelot are there. So now what I want to do is talk about this latest stuff going on with Eddie Page. I'm going to have him back on the show, and hopefully that'll be pretty soon. I know he's putting out communiques. He's been posting to my Facebook lately and various things, but there's a lot of misunderstandings going on. And I do want to say that Simon Parkes and I did briefly discuss, not Eddie, but we discussed his intelligence about the satellites. And Simon did verify that a group of Pleiadians did give the codes to actually take down the satellites, and that those satellites being taken down, they weren't shot down, they were actually turned off and redirected and recontrolled by actually the Trump administration, taking it back from the cabal, is what Simon says. And actually this goes along with the positive side. So in essence, what that means is that Eddie's group of Pleiadians very possibly did supply the codes in order to redirect and take back the satellites, as I understand it. And that's on my video with Simon. So that's a good thing. You know, that means that, at least as far as we know, Eddie is part of a group of Pleiadians that have done something positive. Now, unfortunately, Eddie made a post that triggered this whole, I don't know what you want to call it, battle between Maggie and a journalist called Ari Koppel. Not sure I say her name right, but she's delightful. She is a delightful person, and she's a good, you know, very straight shooter, telling it like it is, as she understands it. And she had interviewed Eddie several times, but they now have a misunderstanding. And that goes back to the fact that Michael, Eddie's brother, and Daniel, Eddie's other brother, apparently have been in touch with both Maggie and Ari, from what I understand. And we have a recording of Michael's conversation with Ari, in which he basically says that he does not agree with Eddie's recent post, which was basically accusing Trump of being the Antichrist, when in reality, he already also accused Obama as being the Antichrist. And apparently in Eddie's world, there are more than one Antichrist. And it also is, all the brothers and sisters have agreed, according to Michael, that they don't agree with that post. So this is why they told Maggie to take down Eddie's YouTube channel and both Facebook channels. So they were very upset over that particular post. They also are sort of, if I understand it, I'm paraphrasing from Michael's audio that I heard, that I hope will be made public, but I think Michael has now disappeared or gone in hiding as a result of this, what's going on, which is strange. I mean, I don't know why these Pleiadians don't have more guts. You know, let me say right away, right here and now, that, you know, where are the cojones on these Pleiadians? Because why are they so afraid of talking to us? I mean, it's just stupid. So they're leaving Eddie out there to defend himself, which is really not very brotherly or loving or whatever you want to call it. So I would highly recommend the other brothers and sisters come forward and support Eddie if you are in support of him. And if you're in disagreement, then say where you're in disagreement so that you just don't leave him out there, to be attacked nonstop. It would also help Ari and Eddie to kind of come to terms and understand each other better. And I have to say that we do have a recording of Michael saying he doesn't agree with a lot of the things Eddie's been doing lately. And I don't believe he agrees with this crazy, sort of point of view that Eddie wants to put out there that has to do with, punishing humans. I believe that this is a mind control thing. Now, let me say that whistleblowers, lots and lots of my whistleblowers are mind controlled. And it does appear, you have to understand the story of Eddie and his siblings, that they lived at Langley on the grounds of the CIA for a certain period of years when they were growing up. And they also were subjected to mind control. Eddie has freely admitted that he participated in a kind of mind control. And you've got to kind of widen your understanding of mind control because it has to do with modifying behavior. So in a certain sense, you could modify behavior to stop smoking. That would be, you trying to control your own mind and stop smoking. But on the other hand, you can control behavior and put in all kinds of implants, et cetera, which is what, Mengele did, also known as Dr. Green. And I'm going to be having a guest on my show, a super soldier who goes by the name of Penny L.A. Shepherd is her last name. And she's going to be on my show on Wednesday. I think it's at 1 p.m. Pacific time. I checked the time. I think I got it wrong in my last video where I explained about this, but she's going to be talking about her own mind control as part of, and she has a great way of referring to this planet. She calls it a military world run by the Draco. And I think that's quite accurate. Obviously, we're trying to wrest control away from the Draco. In theory, Eddie is on our side, and so are his brothers and sisters, and so is his so-called father, who isn't God, but just a guy who runs, a certain group of planets in the Pleiades. So, you guys have to wrap your minds around all this and get rid of the religious overlay, which is mind control in spades. And understand, yes, there's some truth in the Bible, but basically the way it works is, as Leo Zagami, one of my witnesses from way back says, and you can go watch my interview with him, that basically the Bible is a playbook, which means they follow the Bible, the Illuminati, the so-called controllers. So if something is going to happen, they make it happen, and they're going to make certain things happen. So all these things Eddie's talking about are things that they are planning to have happen. And whether Eddie likes it or not, he ends up to be a spokesperson for the dark side. But he is doing a good service to humanity in trying to warn us about what the dark side is planning. Okay. Now, it also doesn't mean it'll come true. If the light side and the light, people that are working on the light and working towards protecting humanity are successful, then a lot of these things will not happen as they are planned to happen. So that's very crucial to understand. And so it is a battle between light and dark. Our future is not decided, contrary to what anyone will tell you. And we have a choice. We are creators, co-creators of our destiny here on planet Earth and of our own futures. So it's very important that you begin to wake up and you get people to wake up and take hold of the future and do what you can to basically wake up consciousness, because consciousness is king. And the end of the day, it's not about, fighting wars with guns and all that kind of stuff, but it's a battle for your hearts and minds. And the ETs understand this very, very well. So if you want to fight for the light and the right, then you need to fight with your mind. You need to be totally equipped and understand what's true and what's false, etc. And being alive is about discerning the truth from falsity. Now, when I interview somebody, it does not mean I agree with them. Hello. Okay. I am a journalist. I am an investigator. That's why I interview people that have worked for like 40 years for the dark side, because I am trying to reveal the truth about the dark side. I'm trying to throw light on the dark side. Okay. Can you understand that? And so wrap your minds around this and try to understand where I'm coming from. I am also not going to do your thinking for you. So from my point of view, my job is to expose the person, to give them enough rope, if you want to call it that, to hang themselves, to tell you their story in the best possible of ways, to ask them the good questions that will reveal them and get them to basically trip up and tell you something they didn't mean to tell you. And basically, when you put it all together, you've got a much better understanding of who the person is, what they're saying, how they're contradicting themselves, et cetera, et cetera. So why have I interviewed Eddie Page more than once? Because Eddie's got a very good story. It's very, very convoluted. There's lots of nuances and things you have to discern and understand and sort of wade through, a lot of rhetoric, because there's tons of overlay of this nonsensical Bible ranting, repent, the end is at hand type of shit. Okay. And I mean shit, because that is how they kept humanity down through the ages. You're always told that you're the problem. Global warming is a complete lie. And they say humans caused it with their car engines. You got to understand, you got to research this stuff. All the planets have been heating up. There's no cars in theory on Venus. You know what I'm saying? So get your head around the real information. Understand what is happening. Our sun is huge in this story. Okay. What's going on in the sun is affecting all the planets in the solar system. What they, shut down the observatories over has to do with communicating with ETs, the Eamon Unsbrough story, and you can go and find out about his quantum mechanical way of basically in a superluminal type of quantum way, trying to basically leapfrog over the secret space program to contact ETs outside the purview of the secret space program. They were found out. They used a technology similar to Eamon's, quite possibly. Now, that doesn't mean Eamon Unsbrough knew anything about it. I talked to him. He doesn't know anything about it. That's what he says. So in theory, they didn't steal his invention or anything else. They simply were doing something similar to what he explains in his interviews with me, of which there are 2. And so nobody else knows this story. I mean, all these other journalists out there they've got no idea. I'm sorry, but it's a fact. Now, I have back channel information. I'm not going to reveal my source, but I've seen very concrete information that substantiates what I'm telling you. On top of it, Simon Parks and I both agree. I got a download last night before my interview with him, which actually said that there are craft near the sun that were affecting the sun, supposedly to create or stop a certain frequency from hitting the earth, and that this was being photographed by all the observatories, not just one, and that's why the so-called FBI was brought in to shut down the one in New Mexico, but it's not the only one. There's 7 of them. So don't go through this, don't believe the press. They're going to lie to you. If their mouths are moving, they're lying because they work for the state, the dark state. And if Trump hasn't made it clear that he and the press do not agree, and therefore, what can you say about Trump? He's trying to work for the light at this time. Now, he has lots of support from the military. He is not acting on his own. No president does. Most presidents are basically, more than anything, figureheads. It's not, he's a spokesperson for the group that he represents, basically. So if you can understand it in that way, and of course, the United States is treated as a corporation by these people and so on. So let me see. I just wanted to go through that. And please understand that this recording that we have of Michael, Eddie's brother, is real. I've listened to it, okay? And this is a conversation he had with Ari Koppel. He is literally saying that Eddie is lying. Now, is Eddie lying? There's some confusion on that. And I'm going to talk to Eddie more about this, and I hope Eddie will watch this. But basically, the bottom line is that there's a gamer console. Now, Eddie went on Ari's show and said that this gamer console that's part of a game that this guy who was watching went out and researched and found is the same as what Eddie was saying, a photograph that Eddie was saying is the inside of a Pleiadian ship. Well, now, how could that be? What is very possibly likely is that it is the inside, or very like the inside of a Pleiadian ship. And why would that be? Because you have to watch my interview with William Tompkins. If you haven't seen my 3-hour interview with William Tompkins, all about the Pleiadians, how they were instrumental in jumpstarting our secret space program in every way, and how they were battling even during that program with the reptilians, who were also vying for control. And the same thing was going on, by the way, in Nazi Germany. So this, if you don't have this background, you don't understand what you're listening to. You don't understand how Eddie could make a mistake or be actually telling the truth, but it look like a lie because it's on some fucking, sorry for my French, but some game out there, right? Because what goes down into the movies and video games and everything that we see around us is they're seeding it with information from the real thing. Okay. And so, of course, these things look alike. Hello. So, it's just like you're seeing the inside of a car, you would see the inside of a car. You might drive that car, and then you would see that actually it looks just like the inside of another car or a spaceship or whatever. It's because this stuff is derivative. Okay. It's related. Now, we had another witness, I'm not going to say who it was, who did the exact same thing. He showed Bill and I way back when a photograph supposedly coming from the secret space program of a woman astronaut type pilot. And it turned out to be an actress who was in a movie. Okay. Now, in this case, I think that guy knew exactly what he was doing. He knew he was lying. Then he tried to back it up. But for all intents and purposes, it's completely possible for an agent who works for these agencies to be given, documentation that they then put out there and say something about, which they themselves could be deceived about. It's very easy to give them a photograph and they be told, this is the secret space. You can put that out there. And then they get caught in their own lies, but they don't know they're lying because they've been given it by the people they work for. And they are basically being, sent to the wolves, if you want, because the intelligence agencies will do this with these guys. Get paid to get sent to the wolves. They get paid to disinfo you. And in the process, sometimes they get disinfoed themselves. It's not uncommon at all. So back to Eddie. So here we have a situation where he's saying things that are going to happen. These things are going to be triggered. They are working on triggering these things. So what that means is that Eddie is as a kid, and, I got this whole download about him being, this very psychic kid. He's probably the most psychic individual as part of his group of the 33 children that came to Earth, the Pleiadian children. He is also not what we consider to be a pure Pleiadian. He is, in essence, a hybrid race, a hybrid part of the Pleiadians that he calls Anunnaki warrior. And he has another word for it. He put it out on a post today. I can't pronounce that word, but at any rate, you'll see it on the post. He calls himself this. What does that mean? It means that he is very likely, because the Pleiadians and the Anunnaki were invaded by Draco all those millennia ago, it's very possible that he is a hybrid reptilian, in essence, reptilian Pleiadian humanoid, so reptilian humanoid. And that is what their race is part of. Now, Simon has his own take on all of this, explained it, and it's quite good information as well. It does dovetail what I'm talking about here. So it's, we are pretty much in agreement on this. I'm going to talk to Eddie more and ask his own opinion of his own racial background. And when he says he looks like something like, supposedly he met with this guy way back, Miles Johnston was part of this story. It happened in Vegas back in, I think, 1993 or something. And a guy named Ray Wardle supposedly saw Eddie in his true form, which was some kind of lizard, if I understand it. And Eddie can clarify that. I don't know if that's true. But if he did, anyway, somehow, whatever he saw, Ray Wardle shut up. Now, apparently, according to Eddie, Ray himself was working for an agency. And the fact is that whatever he saw scared him to death, so to speak, or whatever. And then it silenced him. He stopped coming forward. Now, maybe he can be watching this and, maybe he should come forward and talk to me about his true story. But, it is very important that, I appreciate that everyone, tries to gather the information. They try to listen to the different broadcasters. But a lot of times, with all due respect to everyone out there that is trying so hard, you guys miss the details. You miss the very important things that are being said on my shows and probably other ones. If you listen to a witness and you miss their nuance, you might not understand what they're really saying. So I just want to say that it's really important that people start to understand that what we do as journalists is try to expose the truth. But what we use to do that is the real information out there, is the testimonies of people. So that it would be pointless for me to have a bunch of people on who did nothing but talk about love and light all the time. First of all, those people are probably completely deluded anyway. But what we're really looking for are things where if there is something coming down the pike that the Illuminati are going to do, warning you is very important. But understanding it in context is even more important. So there's quite a bit in the interview I just did, really was more of a discussion with Simon Parkes, because we compare notes. In that, we talk about this and how, how information from witnesses can be used and abused, basically, and misunderstood, and how the news out there is lying to you, and so on and so forth. So I think that covers most of it. I'm going to scan down this, and I also, another corollary to what I've been talking about here has to do with Deborah Tavares and her work, because it's very important to understand that if you want to know, when I say, okay, it's going to be triggered, well, this has to do with weather wars. And if you don't understand weather wars and you don't understand climate change and what they're really, the terraforming of the planet that they're undergoing and so on, then you're not going to understand some of these events that are so-called prophesied in the playbook we call the Bible. Okay, which is not written by God. Okay, God, the creator, is way bigger than some guy sitting in the Pleiades. Okay, so it's very important. He doesn't even consider himself God, wisely speaking. So, and my understanding is the real Pleiadians are 6-dimensional. Okay, so they wouldn't be like coming down to this dimension at this point, not in physical form. Now, what else? I'm just going to scan this really quickly so I make sure I cover all the bases. Again, you can go to this article. I don't have a way to show this on the screen, so you just have to go to my website. ProjectCamelot.tv is the easiest way to remember it. There's just tons of information there explaining the various things so people will get what's really happening. And I see that I need to put a link to my William Tompkins interview. I mean, that is absolute must viewing. If you want to understand Eddie's story, you absolutely must see the William Tompkins 3-hour interview. And William Tompkins has now passed on. At least that's the story we have. He could have gone to Mars. He could have gone underground. He could have gone somewhere else, the Pleiades, for instance. We don't know for sure, but the story is, of course, that he died recently. But the bottom line is that is a background to the Eddie Page story. So if you want to understand that story, it's very important. Eddie knows and acknowledged William Tompkins' story as correct, as far as I understand it. So that's important. Eddie does not claim to know anything about Billy Meyer or the Billy Meyer story. For whatever reason, he never took the time to look into it, even though he knew Wendell Stevens and he was told about it. Now, you got to say to yourself, well, if you're related to a group that's on the earth already, or contacting a guy constantly and so on, you might want to find out about that. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. I don't know why Eddie doesn't do his homework in certain areas, but that could easily be by virtue of mind control. Okay. He didn't want to talk to Eddie, to Billy Meyer or whatever. He was sort of, blindfolded enough not to try to investigate that further. Certainly he would have helped. Maybe he did, and he's basically covering that up because he's been told not to reveal the truth. Who knows? There are lots of possibilities. I'm not claiming they're correct. I'm just saying there's different ways of looking at why a person chooses to look at one thing and not another. There's also these huge books, the Voyager books, which go into way more detail than the Bible about the various ET races visiting Earth, the battles they've had with each other, and who they are, et cetera, the Luciferian rebellion, and, the Draco, the dragon moths that are never talked about but are real, and much, much more than that. So there's a lot to this story. And I just, I do the best I can to bring out witnesses that have grains of truth. Nobody has the whole truth. And it's up to you. It's part of life to become discerning. I am not going to serve truth to you on a silver platter. Every once in a while, I will do an interview or a presentation, or I'll do something like this, where I will try to give you clues as to what I know about these various things, as I'm doing here and now. But still, you're going to discern for yourself. You're going to agree or disagree with me. I get all that. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Witnesses come forward. They tell the truth in some ways. Then they tell lies to keep themselves alive. It's kind of like a quid pro quo, or whatever you want to call it, with the intelligence agencies who they know want to take them down. So some of them have to pay the piper in the process, if you will. So then if somebody tells you a lie, does that mean everything they tell you is suspect and not true? No. It means that they told you a lie, and that you need to investigate all the other things they tell you. But it's very possible, with whistleblowers at least, that they're telling you some truth. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth the trouble. They simply, nobody other than just, people that are doing nothing but putting out disinfo, it's not worth it, the trouble, because life becomes very, very difficult the minute you try to put the truth out. So if you want to know if somebody's telling the truth, then you have to see whether they're also under attack and whether they get interfered with, the way CAMELOT is constantly interfered with, and the way Simon Parks, for example, is interfered with, and Deborah Tavares, and various of us who really are telling the truth. I venture to say that there are other people out there who are not telling the truth, who are working for the agencies, and they probably have pristine broadcasts with no interference. So this is the kind of thing that goes on. Let me see if there's anything else that I might have forgotten. Now, we do have a chat room associated with this sort of impromptu live thing that I'm doing. So if you want to ask me questions, I guess I could try to grab them, and it's going by kind of fast. And yes, I believe Jesus was a being, that he is a kind of an avatar, that he is actually, I go along with the Ashana Dean version, which has to do with there's more than one Jesus, that there was a 6th dimensional Jesus and there was a 9th dimensional Jesus, and that they basically put them together in a composite and then put it into the Bible as a story. Most of what's supposedly attributed to Jesus in the Bible are lies, but there's some truth. Okay. So in case you want to know, I know somebody's saying that in the in the chat. So let's see. Will I interview Judy Wood? You know, I asked her for an interview a long time ago. She said I had to read her book, and until I did that, she wouldn't let me do an interview with her. I wanted to read her book, but first of all, it's pretty expensive. And second of all, it's incredibly long. And third of all, I have tons of back channel information already on 9/11. So I don't really need to go through reading a lot of stuff. But, you know, that's that situation. Let me see. Somebody wants to know if I've seen somebody named Gina Marie Colvin Hills. Images of the sun. No, I haven't, but you're welcome to send them to me or links or whatever. I don't think Maria Orsic and Samyasi are the same. No, I don't even think they look that much alike, frankly. The book's better than the Bible in terms of the history of humanity and the various ET races and the wars, heaven, et cetera, is the Voyager books. They're on the front page of Project Camelot. So all you do is go to projectcamelot.tv, scroll down on the right-hand side, you'll see 2 Voyager books. One is available in a PDF form. It's quite cheap. I think it's $19, and excellent information, hands down. Cameron Faley, he went to ground. He kind of lost his mind. He started asking 1 million women to marry him. And let me say that, you know, it's very sad because a lot of my whistleblowers lose their minds. They get famous overnight. They are attracted, you know, lots of women. This is happening to Eddie Page, by the way. He's being hit on by all these women. And, you know, they're full of it. I mean, a lot of these women are full of it. Sorry. But they are, you know, deceiving the guys. And these men are completely useless. So they, you know, fall for everything under the sun and also are, you know, whatever. And so the bottom line with Cameron, the sad thing is that a lot of his information was very, very good in terms of the financial stuff and the stuff in the Middle East, which is truth. But his stuff about, you know, Nibiru, et cetera, was probably a mixture of truth and falsity. He was becoming deceived. He was used. He was abused. He became a target by the Illuminati, which he used to work for them. So why wouldn't he be? They love taking down somebody who works for them, who turns against them and tries to tell truth. So it's understandable that he actually became a target. He did go to ground. I'm not in touch with him. I have gotten some back channel information about him periodically. You know, stuff that happens to him, it happened to other people as well that I interview. Richard Bruce, I don't know who that is. Send me information about him. No idea who that is. Let's see, what else here? Elon Musk. You know, I've asked Elon Musk for an interview. I've done it publicly, and I also called his company and tried to get an interview with him. I haven't gotten any luck on that. If anyone knows him, please do tell him about me, my channel. It would be awesome to interview him. I would really have a lot of good questions for him, let me tell you. Let me see, what else? There's some, okay, somebody is asking Kevin Moore. Oh, Kevin Moore, he's a British, I guess, broadcaster and a channeler himself. He is now taking the side of the guys who committed the murder that supposedly Mark Richards is said to have masterminded. So for some reason, and you have to look at this kind of an interesting thing, he's British, and the British have a reason. for Mark Richards, because of my interviews, has become more and more popular, and more, they have read, people are out there looking at what I put out there that he says, and so on and so forth, as well as his wife, Joanne Richards. So I'm sure that the dark side of the Illuminati, that are very much ensconced in Britain, have decided to basically mind control this guy, Kevin Moore, into believing the lies that the so-called victims who did the killing, it's not the victim, it's the killer, but who were in prison. And he's basically now trying to make a documentary that implicates Mark Richards, even though he's got no idea what he's talking about. So, I have refused to be in his video. I gave him a clear statement as to why. And, I understand what his motivation is. I even talked to Simon Parks today, and he again says he thinks Mark Richards will be pardoned when some of these indictments come through, and the Trump people and people behind Trump are able to basically catch some of these dark siders, which has to do with pedophiles, child traffickers, and the network that runs them, etc. So, I am not in support of what Kevin Moore is attempting to do, but he, it's a free world, so sort of. And if that took his fancy and he wants to align himself with the wrong side, that's okay. Light workers are often used by the dark side. It is so common. It's unbelievable. Am I going to interview Corey Goode? Maybe someday. There was one time when I was going to actually interview both David Wilcock and Corey Goode together back in, a few years ago during that time when they were on Gaiam and together and all this stuff. I was never in agreement with them, but I figured I don't have to be agreeing with people in order to interview them. So I was going to, but they both backed out. So let's see. I'm not terribly interested in interviewing, about the Corey Goode story. There is truth there. I mean, for sure, but some of it is false. And I have evidence that Corey has lied to people and myself and so on, and misrepresented himself. And he's mind controlled, and I understand, and I forgive him. And, this is just the lay of the land. I mean, I've worked in this, consciously and fully for 12 and a half, going on 13 years now. And I work almost all the time. And so the amount of stuff that I've been through, especially with so-called whistleblowers that, especially when they claim to have so-called special powers, etc., they almost always turn on you. It just goes with the freaking territory, and for no reason. Like overnight, they're your friends and then they're your enemies. And that's because they're triggered. They're basically implanted with all sorts of stuff. They can be triggered on an instant. It's like a dog, a guard dog that just turns against you. So let me see. AI, for the best information on AI, you should look at my interviews with Mark Richards, because I really talk to him about that a lot. And more and more, especially the more recent ones, there's quite a bunch of really good stuff on AI. Elon Musk, he knows way more than he's saying. Of course, he would never have been given the access to do what he does, which is kind of on the peripheral of the secret space program, unless he was playing ball with them. That's no doubt about it. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's sort of hanging on the best he can. David Wilcock, I did contact him, believe it or not, for an interview after he resigned from Gaiam TV. And I consider David a friend. And although we're not much in touch, I disagree with him on a lot of things. Let me tell you that. But I can say that, he's a well-meaning soul, and he was right about Gaiam. I was, wined and dined by Gaiam. I knew what was happening. I'm very aware of it. I don't know why, Jay Widener has tolerated that situation for as long as he has, but I expect at some point he'll sort of wake up and smell the flowers, so to speak. But I think he also may have that sort of philosophy that a lot of sort of good people at heart do, which is work for the dark side so that you can expose them eventually, and do good within the dark, the sort of parameters of the dark. So there are a lot of white lighters doing that, and I appreciate that. Wes Penrace, I have invited him for interviews. I've looked over some of his stuff, very good stuff. Once in a while, I don't agree with his stuff, but he's always welcome to do an interview. Let's see. Okay, I'm due to go visit Mark Richards it's actually the appointment is the 29th of this month, which is September 2018. I'm going to be going ahead of time to try to interview another witness, a secret witness, in case that can happen. Your donations would be very helpful because I don't like going in debt on my credit card in order to do these interviews, but we'll have to deal with what happens. Let's see. Well, did Wilcock leave Guyam because they're satanic? Let me say that, Guyam is as satanic as the rest of Hollywood, which is kind of like a loaded way of answering that question. I mean, the bottom line is they follow the dark principles. They are doing things, and some nefarious things. And I don't know, David was really blind for a long time, but I believe, in essence, David did it for the money. He wanted the exposure. He wanted the money. He got paid decently to work for Guyam. So that's what kept him on board for a long time. I think eventually they pushed his sort of principles too far, and he finally saw the light. Why he's not seeing the light before that, I don't know, but whatever, everything has a purpose. Jordan Maxwell, I didn't know he was homeless again. If he is, he should contact me just so we can get him on the show. I was in touch with him recently because I invited him to come to Egypt. I'm going to go to Egypt in the spring of 2019 with Maria Wheatley, who I went with last year, and we had a fabulous trip. We're about to release our documentary of that trip. It'll blow your mind. I think for those of you who haven't been, and for those that have been, you will see things that have never been shown in any other documentary of Egypt. Why? I don't know. Why, when I go to Göbekli Tepe, do we show things that none of the other people that go to Göbekli Tepe ever show you? It's all about, your discernment. It's all about, what you're willing to reveal to people, and how much people will put themselves on the line to do so. A lot of people trying to protect their own asses. I don't believe in doing that so much. It's just not my kind of thing. I prefer to tell the truth as I find it. Okay. Bill Ryan. No, I'm not going to be working with him again, probably, because we have a serious falling out in terms of principle. He wanted to start revealing, believe it or not, the whistleblowers that he thought were not telling the truth. Even though he knew they were telling some truth, he decided he wanted to become, in essence, the judge and the jury of our whistleblowers. And that is not what Camelot set out to do. We did not say, okay, we'll protect you, and we'll, protect your identity, and we'll take you on board, and we'll put out your testimony as long as you tell the truth. But if you lie to us once, we're going to expose who you are to the public. I mean, that is just ludicrous. It's a complete violation of the principles of Camelot. And I'm very sad, but Bill did that. Okay. And anyone who doesn't know about that story needs to go on Avalon and go way back in history to find it, because it's all water under the bridge. I love the guy, but I'm sorry he's kind of screwed up in his head. So whatever. He will get it together, like most souls, eventually, understanding that it's not up to him, to be judge and jury and throw people in, before the wolves when you promise to protect them, and so on. Anyway, so let's see what else. I don't I don't remember seeing, somebody wants me to interview somebody who calls themselves a messiah. You know, I doubt that they have any true messiah qualities. Whatever. What else? I'm trying to see if there's any other good questions in here, and not so much. Actually, Simon Parks reveals who he thinks QAnon is. He says that I think he said 4 guys and a artificial intelligence, which is very interesting. Now, Simon warns people that in the next 2 weeks, somewhere in the next 2 weeks, like last week of September on into October, a lot of the indictments are going to come through. As a result, there could be a shutdown in some services. There could be some battles going on, some crazy stuff between the Illuminati insiders and the cabal and the good side, whatever you want to call that, and so on. Bob Dean is very ill. He's basically, close to passing on. I tried to get him, I've tried to interview him many times, but since he's been sick, but Marcia, his wife, doesn't want him to go in public anymore. He is kind of half in this world and half out of it. I don't know his absolute current state, but, last time I saw him, he kissed and hugged me a lot of times, trying to kind of convey that he didn't think he'd be around next time. So let's see. Do I think JFK Jr.? I love to think that JFK Jr. is alive and working on the good side. In fact, I saw the video that talked about him possibly being among QAnon. I think it's possible he is, if he's alive. I think that actually made some sense. Egypt is on our website you just go to the front page of projectcamelot.tv, click on events, and you will see the trip to Egypt, all the details about it, the itinerary, and the dates are April 17th to the 27th. So, and by the way, we may have some, a secret speaker coming on board, but they haven't been able to ascertain if they can come yet. But if they do, it will be, let's say, quite amazing. So stay tuned for my Egypt trip. It's going to be quite an amazing trip. Let me see if there's anything else here. Some of you trolls, can just get the hell out of here. Let's see, Jay Essex. Not sure who that is. Linda Moulton Howe, we did an interview and they interfered with us so much that the audio is so difficult to listen to. But it's on my website. It's on YouTube channel. I would interview her again. I like Linda. She's a great investigator. I don't always agree with her, but that doesn't matter. The only thing is that they keep messing, they messed with us so much that I don't even know if she'd be willing to do another interview. What that tells you is they're really afraid to have people like us talk to each other. They really would prefer we be enemies. And so they want to, mess with you as much as possible. So that's what they did. Let's see. Patty Broussard. Yes, I know about that person. I think they were in touch with me recently. Not sure what's going on there. Trying to skim this really quickly and see if there's anything else. Okay, well, the Space Force already exists. Trump is just trying to break the news to, the regular people out there that don't listen to my channel, basically, and don't understand that we already have a secret space program. And we have had for the last, well, at least 30 years and probably longer, 40, maybe even 50 years at this point. Not sure what else here there is. Okay, so I think that covers most things now. I hope that I covered and answered a lot of questions. I hope that you'll share this with people. I hope people will go and read my article and stay tuned, because I will have Eddie on the show. I would like Eddie and Ari couple and Maggie to get along. I think it's not fair that Eddie thinks that Maggie decided to just arbitrarily delete his channel. That's not what happened. He's got to understand that, unfortunately, his brother Michael, at least, appears to have been lying to him, unless he's telling him the truth now, that he actually told, he and Daniel are the ones that told Maggie to take down his stuff. So that's a fact. We have it recorded. So Maggie did what she was told, more or less. And now she's getting all hell for it. It's just not fair. Now, whether there are other reasons why Maggie is distancing herself from Eddie, I know that she, like me, does not believe in this doom and gloom, punish humanity scenario. This is complete nonsense. So what Eddie does is, as a programmed kid, he was basically brought into this vindictive Bible sort of idea of a very vindictive God. And he seems to have internalized that, also because at the time he didn't get along with his foster father, whatever you can call that person. And he seems to have latched onto the father in the Bible. And then at the same time, he has supposedly, if you believe his story, which is very possible, a Pleiadian father that he eventually met as he grew older, but not, the Vatican was in on this story, and the Vatican and the CIA, I think, were told that Eddie was going to be highly psychic. He knew he reported the death of Kennedy before it happened. So he was a child that was highly psychic, Pleiadian, brought, in part from another planet, who could expose the dark side's plans. And so what they seem to have done is taken him over and convinced him, to sort of steer his psychic ability. So he's still psychic, but what he does is he paints the picture in terms of this vindictive God, instead of delving into understanding the technology that humans have and the aliens that are helping them, and really delving down into that side of the story. And he hasn't spent time investigating. He doesn't know about chemtrails, for God's sake. He doesn't understand the terraforming that humans are doing to their own planet with the help of various ET races. So he doesn't kind of get that deeper story, in my opinion. And he sees everything in terms of this Bible, mumbo jumbo. And so sadly, he hasn't, he's got correct stuff. They are planning to trigger Yellowstone. I've seen it. I have seen the future. Okay. And don't tell me I don't know about prophecy, because basically, I'm a precog. I see the future all the time. And a lot of times it comes true. So I'm not saying it always will. I believe, as I say on the interview with Simon Parks, that we have many timelines. Some will happen, some will not. Some will be a sort of a mixture of the two. So it's important that you, as a positive being alive at this time, work towards a positive timeline. No, California is not being thrown into the sea. First of all, it's the hugest moneymaker, and it's also the home of the secret space program. So you go figure, how smart would that be? It's just not going to happen. I've seen it in the future. California is still here. And so is Sean David Morton. And if you believe in other psychics, premonitions and so on, and so on. Now, will parts of California be inundated by water? Yes, I can say that according to my future information. Will there be a major earthquake? I mean, God damn it, huge earthquake in LA in the near future? Yes. Will there be one in San Francisco? Yes. These things will happen. It's true. But, that's life. It's not the end of the world just because you have an earthquake. It might make, living in certain areas a little dicey. But there's lots of things going on, behind the scenes. And some things, some groups are going to try to create things and other groups are going to stop them. And it's a constant war of worlds here on planet Earth. Keep that in mind. There's no, fairyland future. There's no golden days of summer for humanity here on the planet Earth for a very long time, if ever. Think about it. If you take away the challenge of being on this planet, then what's the point of coming here as a soul? You're coming here because it is an interplay of light and dark. So enjoy it. You're part of the game. Try to do good. Try to be on the good side, and if you're on the dark side, try to wake the fuck up and, and help the positive side eventually. Become a whistleblower. Whistleblowers are not angels. They are people who have worked in the dark side for sometimes as long as 40 years. And then they have a wake up call and they decide to cross over and work for the light. So that's the story. That's where you get the good information. What else can I tell you? Thanks for watching and listening and have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.